Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing great. I'm excited to finally start the first Psychology of Dark Side Phil stream. I'm a little nervous. I don't really know why. Maybe I'll get canceled or something. Or maybe he'll finally send those assassins my way. You know, the ones that he sent on Tebin. So I'm going to start a little bit of music here. It's just to mask all my lip smacking. This comes from us from the channel Chill Village. Here, I'll give them a plug real quick. Look at these guys. Chill Village. Daily Work Office. Chill Lo-Fi. So, enjoy the chill. If it gets too loud, let me know. Sorry, didn't mean to clap right there. So, I'm going to go over a little bit of some disclaimers and sort of how this system is going to go. This is going to be a bit more of a discussion style stream. I guess you could call it a podcast if you were really that insane. I could post videos or bring up videos that highlight certain points, and I might do that. But in general, I don't really see that's necessary because a lot of the things that I'll address are things that are pretty common DSP-based observations. You know, you can see one stream and see this happen. So those kind of things. Or they will reference extremely notorious videos that I'd like to think everyone's seen by now. Furthermore, I'm going to try not to be too comedic. Not that I'm actually really funny ever, but that I'm trying not to focus on making this be about goofiness. And I want to head this off for DSP when his spies see this and send this to him. I am not doing an official diagnosis on DSP. That's not what this is about. Not a real podcast. I'll work on it. Maybe in the future I can work into building up how late I am. DSP is going to get annoyed because who are you? How can you diagnose me? This isn't a diagnosis. It's not. I'm not going to be getting out the DSM. I'm not going to be saying DSP is certified clown. I'm not going to do that. What I'm saying here are, to quote the incredibly well-spoken man, Plague of Gripes, I'm telling you what I'm observing. That's really all I'm saying. And then you can kind of construct stuff from what you're observing and say, well, why is it this way? And that's what I want to get to is abnormal has a cause. And DSP is a pretty abnormal dude. So I would love to, Little Shadow. Let's, if we can, we should probably work on an outline together. This one is probably going to be a little bit girthier than other ones, and that's because it's a bit more of a foundational subject, is his mom. And from here branches off all the other things that are related to DSP. No, I don't want to necessarily diagnose him in that capacity. I might drift into armchair psychology in some ways, but like I said, I'm mostly just trying to give my best explanation as to why he's so weird. And then there's one other thing I want to discuss, and that's the nature of the chat. I'm going to try and focus more on my outline, so there will be periods where I'm not reading chat for a while. I want to just, in advance, kind of apologize, because it's an intensely focused gameplay. But also, I don't want to necessarily lose my train of thought. I thank you for your understanding. I will pause occasionally to review what all everyone has said. So we're going to start off with who exactly is DSP's mom? And that's the subject for today. And let's put it up there on the screen. What do you say? Maybe. DSP's mom, most of what we know comes directly from him. We really don't have a lot of information outside of her. We know her name's Linda. And DSP in general has told pretty few stories about his direct relatives. And what stories we do have of his mom are usually very banal or insignificant. You know, my mom took me to the grocery store and I got some cereal. Stuff like that. It's nothing really. However, there are some key things to notice here about, in general, with his stories about mom. And that's, he talks about his mom far more than he talks about his dad. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And it tends to reflect that he had more interaction and experiences with his mom as opposed to his dad. Again, that's not a bad thing. because there are parents that work like crazy and just don't have that much time with them. However, it's generally the case that the parent you spend the most amount of time with has the most influence on your personality. Oh, JDX, thank you. It was kind of a concurrent evolution. A lot of people have been telling me, a lot of people have been asking for this. And it's something that I always wanted to do, but I never really had the courage, I guess, to do it, or more like, it's kind of cringy. I don't really want to do it. But enough of you people saying that I should do it got me to do it. What do you mean, you people? But DSP's stories about his mom so magnificently dwarf his stories about his dad. There's only maybe 5 stories, if that many, that involve his dad. And I'm not talking about recent events where, I called my dad about my tire being missing. No. I'm talking about everything pretty much historically. He brought him up one time when he was discussing He-Man figures. He brought him up when discussing how he got his job. And he brought him up one time when he was discussing Dad coming over to help paint. And the only other time that I know that he's brought him up off the top of my head is when he was talking about how his dad brought over some extension cables. Meanwhile, Mom has multiple stories about her. And what are those stories basically saying? Mostly his narrative of his mother is negative, which isn't a surprise. DSP's a pretty negative person. He only sees the worst in people. She is described as being very self-centered. She cares only about her own way, and she's very stubborn in getting her own way. Yeah, the hole in the wall fix also. Yes, that one too. So she is also described as being generally unconcerned about the safety of others. And not so much that she drives on the sidewalk or something, but stuff like she smokes indoors, or she doesn't want to leave a dangerous neighborhood because she's content where she's at. So stuff like that, jeopardizing your family, or however you can contextualize that. That doesn't necessarily mean you're being bad. Maybe you just can't afford to move. But from DSP's narrative, she could have moved, but she chose not to. She also, ironically, or paradoxically, is also described as very idyllic, and that whenever he describes adventures or whatever he had with her, or outings, she's always described as very, very motherly. Now fill up, now fill up, now fill up. And it's something worth remembering that DSP is a very unreliable narrator. His stories are almost always created to make him look like the good person in the room. So it's important to take that into account when he's describing his interactions or experiences with his mother. And now when we discuss current events, his mother is still more the focus than ever when it comes to his parent relationships. Just a couple streams ago, he was talking about how when I call my family, he instead just says when I'm calling my mom or when I'm talking to my mom. He never brings up Dad, really. And when he had the wedding thing, when he was describing the post-wedding lecture that was the 10-year plan, Dad wasn't in the equation at all. He was not spoken of as though he were even in the room. So it really shows that even after all these years, the primary character he has the most interaction with is his mom. Mom, wife, she ran as live, the hole in the wall fix. I remember that. That sounded like a video series style. Damn, I assume this was a premiere, not a live stream. No, I'm sorry. Now, I wanted this to be kind of a stream. Why I chose for this to be a stream is I really wanted people to express their comments on it and give their own feedback and thoughts, and also to have that recorded kind of on video. Live, you're on video. It'd be kind of cool to see what other people's thoughts are. So let's discuss DSP's main characteristic behavior, and that is his narcissism. Narcissism tends to have 2 distinct different origins, and it's very weird that they're completely on opposite ends. And that is, weirdly enough, exemplified in 2 different lolcows. And one of them is Dale, low tier god. When you hear Low Tier God's story about his childhood, it is extremely depressing. It's very painful to hear. Basically, he was socially ostracized. He had no friends. He had not really any family. His family turned on him or wasn't loyal to him in several capacities. He was bullied relentlessly to precise. He didn't feel like he had a stable home life, like they were moving around a lot. And then the other most important thing, is that he was constantly made to feel like he was less than important. So that's the kind of survivor version of narcissism that gets birthed out of that. And that is the narcissism of telling yourself, no, I am important, but taking that too far. Because it is important to tell yourself, no, I'm actually kind of significant, I do matter. But to LTG, or the survivor kind of narcissist, they instead get it in their head, no, I'm actually better than everyone. I'm better than all these people who are bullying me. I'm better than everyone in my community. I'm the best, period. I came from BBC Angel genes. I'm the greatest. So I don't think that's where DSP's origin comes from, of his narcissism. I think he'd want to pretend like that was it, but I don't think that's it. Instead, he's the more classic version narcissist, and that's the prince. And the prince has become narcissistic because, well, they've been raised to believe that. And more often than not, people's behaviors don't just come out of nowhere. People have preset dispositions, but you're ultimately the result of your experiences and what you've been taught, right? And DSP, the way he thinks about things, the way he processes information, and the way that he conceptualizes things makes it very clear that his first and primary mindset is, I didn't do anything wrong. And you see this, pick a video, pick one, at random selection of one of his videos. This is his mindset. Oh, I failed in this game. The game cheated. I did nothing wrong. And that kind of mentality comes from a parent consistently telling their kid whenever they ran into any sort of conflict, it's okay. You didn't do anything wrong. This concept, it's kind of hard to say it, but you can kind of understand it from a parent's perspective. From a parent's perspective, it's very difficult to tell your kid, what happened to you happened because you're a dumbass shithead and you make bad choices. That was your fault you fell off your bicycle because you were trying to eat 2 ice creams at the same time while riding your bicycle. You see how that could have maybe led to you falling on your face. It is hard for a parent to do that. They want to protect their kid from guilt in some capacity. That's not abnormal. And in fact, my parents did that several times, where retroactively I look back at it and I think, no, that was me. That was me. I did that. That was my fault. But more often than not, my dad had no problems telling me, you dumbass. Maybe you could have avoided that. You know, he wasn't that intense, but maybe you could have avoided that stupid crap. But if you do that consistently with a child, they will eventually just internalize that their reaction to negative stimuli should be, I did nothing wrong. It was actually my bike that was poorly designed. It was probably like the frame wasn't balanced right or something. Like they probably made a really shitty bike. Or maybe the tires were kind of bent or whatever. It should have worked. I should have been fine. Because that's what kids learn. Kids learn how to think from their parents or from their authority figures. That's how they think. My parents always taught me to ask where I could have done better, or maybe there's other explanations. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. There were times where it wasn't my fault and shit just happens. It happens. The other thing, the other thing that can come into this is praise. And praise is a very dangerous thing because you obviously want to praise your kid when he does right. You know, you can't just criticize him when he does wrong and not ever praise him when he does right. You're going to get a whole different type of weirdo at the end of that. But there's a certain art to praise. And that is, you can't praise the individual too much as though those traits were innate to them. For example, you can't say too much, oh, you're a very smart kid. Or, oh, you're very hardworking. Oh, you are this. You are this. You can do it a little bit because, well, you can't stop yourself from doing it every time. But the thing is eventually, if you do that enough, the person, the child, will eventually internalize, oh, I'm just smart. Therefore, my actions will be just smart. That's why when you praise a child, you are more supposed to praise their behaviors. You're supposed to say, oh, that was a smart idea. Oh, that was some hard work you did on that project. You were very clever when you thought of this. You were very compassionate when you did this. And it teaches that these things are tied to actions or behaviors or tendencies. And that's why you see that with DSP. DSP isn't smart because he makes smart decisions. No, he's smart because he's smart. He's not a hard worker because he gets up early and takes care of his streams early and does all this work for the stream on the behind the scenes. No, he's a hard worker because he's a hard worker. That's his nature. That's who he is. That's what my mommy told me. And this is something that's shown to have a lot of research on it. On account of DSP's reaction to his dad's photo, DSP is distant from his father. Yeah, he has, I'll get to that. I'll explain a little bit more on that possibly later. But it's, raising a kid is hard, I imagine. That's kind of why I don't want to have kids. Because you're one missed Wolverine figure away from having DSP. You know, it's very dangerous. There's also the matter of temperament. And temperament is a thing that's measured with babies. And that there are 4 main types of temperament. There used to be kind of 3, but then they kind of added a 4th one, other, essentially. And temperament is, how does your baby react to confusion or distress? And that can be, I was thinking about this study, but I've forgotten what it was called, and I was reminded that it's called the Strange Situation Study. And it's a way of testing how babies react to situations. And it tests what kind of temperament they have. And temperament is more or less genetic. And DSP has a very reactive, disconnected temperament. And you see this still manifest in his behaviors to this day, where as soon as something is unpleasant to him, his first reaction is to kind of flip out. He really doesn't have anything approaching stoicism. He doesn't have anything approaching comfort. Not really. He's constantly on edge and constantly freaking out. And this has always been the case. When people started criticizing him when he first started doing YouTube, his first reaction was, I've done nothing wrong. You all a bunch of pieces of shit. Now, temperament doesn't necessarily stay with you in its raw form all throughout your life. Like my older brother. My older brother had pretty much the same temperament as a baby as I think DSP did. But my older brother is nothing like DSP. He probably is the person I know who has the least amount of characteristics similar to DSP. So, temperament isn't destiny, but it is an underlying thing. One more other thing with parent raising is that when you criticize your child, or better yet, not so much criticize, but comment on how they could do better, this also built a sense of decency and civility and social mores. Notice that Philo doesn't have any of this. He doesn't have any of this. And you can see this on display any stream. That DSP's understanding of basic social cues are really next to nothing. When he did all that shit with John Rambo. Sorry, it took me a second. When he did all that shit with John Rambo, and he was reading off texts on stream, or divulging people's private information, when did you, let me ask this to viewer, and you don't have to answer it, just think in your head. When did you learn what was common decency. More often than not, when you violated it, and then your parent pulled you aside and said, don't do that. Don't do that. This is wrong of you to do this certain thing that you did. Yeah, KW, I'm going to get to that in a minute. And for example, I'll name one from my personal experience. When I was a little kid, a friend of my dad's took us out to eat somewhere. And I remember not liking it. I don't remember what it was, but I remember I didn't like it. And so after eating it, I made like a disgusting face and I said, this was gross. Ew, we should have gone somewhere else. And my dad pulled me aside after that and said, that was disrespectful. My friend paid money that he worked for to feed you. If you do not like the meal, you do not say it. You can tell me afterwards. You can say, hey, Dad, when we went to Burger King and they gave me that mess of a burger, I have the same experience apparently as DSP did. You can tell me afterwards. And then from there, if we're going out with my friend again and he says, hey, you want to go to Burger King? I'd be like, maybe we should try something else. But you do not say that in front of them. And I learned from that. I learned you just don't do it. It's just rude. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. DSP, he must have had these sort of events in his life where he did something that embarrassed or frustrated his parents. But for some reason, they never actually talked to him about it. Or maybe he wasn't very perceptive or he wasn't paying attention, which is very possible because he seems like a rather stupid individual. And so when he does stuff like read off people's personal information or private discussions on stream or post pictures of people's driver license on Discord, when he says, and a couple of times he said this, well, I didn't know that was wrong. I kind of believe him. Because I don't think his parents told him about this. Now, there is a flaw in my theory. I will admit that. He knows when it's wrong that's happened to him. And I'll address that later. But that's part of narcissism. And that narcissist, I'll give a little preview, narcissist knows what bothers them. But those very same things can't possibly bother you. It's just not possible. So when DSP is shitting on streamers, and he is convinced in his head, PWW submitted this driver's license to my business. Look, that's pretty funny. He wanted me to show this. See, there we go. I lost my train. Damn it. When he's talking shit on streamers, he doesn't see that that's a bad thing. He doesn't see that shitting on people openly is a bad thing. And then to further go into DSP's coddling and tutoring that he received from his parents, I think that a lot of his negativity came from his parents. And I think it came from mom in particular. And I think mom was the kind of person, my dad was this kind of person. And thankfully, for whatever reason, I'm kind of resistant to it. Where he tends to have negative views about everyone. If you ride in a car with my dad, you're going to hear his thoughts about every single driver on the road. Even the dude who's pulled off to the side and is missing his leg, you're going to hear something negative about the dude. So I think that his mother modeled a lot of negative commentary and then followed it up with, well, I'm just being honest. I'm just being direct. So DSP probably did that too. And that his mom was like, well, he says his mind. He sure says what he thinks. He's very honest about his feelings. And he internalized that to be a good thing. And that's kind of, coddling develops a sense of normal that is more or less incompatible with reality. And the other thing that also develops is a sense of superiority. Because to them, it is normal that they are praised. It's normal that I'm special. It's normal that my needs are more important. It's normal that I can talk shit about people because I'm just being honest. It's normal for me to do that. However, If anyone is less than that, if they have less than what the narcissist has, they're some sort of weird degenerate weirdo. But if they have more, they're a cheater. For example, you see this in, again, any DSP stream. Take your pick. Hey, DSP, this person's more successful than you. Why is that? Because they were born into money. They don't have to work. They do shitty, lazy content. They have a team of people who help them out. They, I assume, have some sort of genie that helps them. They did not get there legitimately. They cheated. And you see that with low tier God, his narcissism. If you do better than me, you're a cheater. I'm going to take a pause here and read some of the comments. Who is that? I don't even know who. Right? My name is Beep. That's not... Okay. Well, please give a big-ass pet to Beep. No one told me I wasn't supposed to waste my wishes. I wished for more clarity. That should just be built in. Counter, he has projected from the negative things and arguments and was constantly praised. So when he entered the real world and given neutral criticism, he takes it... Yes. That's exactly correct, Roman. I see you read ahead here a little bit. But, and that's because a narcissist doesn't necessarily build the castle on the top of the mountain themselves. They are essentially put there on top of the mountain. And that's what you see with prince-based narcissists, is they're told they're the greatest. Therefore, there's only one direction an attack can come, and that's towards the top, to the top of the tower. So anything attacking them, even if it's something very banal, attack. And also I will counter this with, I'll counter myself, with some of his weird stories that he's told about his mom. There is a very interesting set of stories that he tells about whenever he goes to stores with his mom when he was a kid. I hope this isn't current. When he was a kid, he would get taken to the toy aisle, given a toy, and they would walk around the Kmart or whatever. And at the end of the journey, and it was time to ring up all the stuff, she would tell him, all right, Philip, go ahead and put the toy back. And then he would put it back. I don't really know how much I believe that, because first of all, DSP is an unreliable narrator. But the other thing that's very important to remember is that coddling is not the same thing as spoiling. More often than not, they're done at the same time, but it is in fact possible to be coddled and not spoiled. You can, because coddling is more about teaching a mentality or a mindset or a sense of belonging or a sense of purpose, whereas spoiling is more attached to physical possessions or money spent. So they are not the same thing. They're often together though. And this can actually create a conflict with kids, because if they're coddled, they develop that sense of, well, I deserve it. So you get a really weird effect where if you're coddled but not spoiled, you can actually turn out worse in some ways than if you're coddled and spoiled at the same time. Because a coddled person will resent not being spoiled. And I feel like you see that a lot with DSP. DSP resents that he doesn't have everything he wants. He is angered that he doesn't have just what he should deserve. And it comes probably from that he deserved that toy, Mom. I earned it, and you didn't give it to me. Well, tough luck. And on the subject of coddling, I don't think that his father coddled him much. I think what his father did, and I'll give him kind of the benefit of the doubt, I feel like what his father did what a parent is supposed to do. A parent is supposed to set your kid up for success in whatever ways that you can. He sent him to private school. He got him a job. I think, now this one I'm not sure. I've got a little bit of fuzzy memory, so don't count this one as official lore. I think he also helped him get his condo in some capacity, like signed off for it or something or other. But I'm not positive on that one. So, and when you get a situation like that, and you're doing this for a person who has become coddled, or become spoiled, or become entitled, you get what you have with his guidance counselor, where DSP has reached a state where even things that weren't supposed to be coddling reinforces his coddling mindset. These things that were given to me, I just earned them. They're just mine. I was due a job, and my dad got me one. That's also why I'm trying to take his position. I just deserved to be in all these higher echelon classes because I earned it. Not that my dad paid for it or got me in there or anything. No. This is mine. And the guidance counselor, I'm sure what happened with the guidance counselor, the backstory on that is DSP was crying about one time he wasn't able to get into the Ivy League colleges, even though he deserved it. He earned it. This is mine. But the problem with it is that he didn't get in. And the reason that he gives is because he wasn't a black athlete, which, bummer, I guess. I guess your dad can't help you with that. And he said that his guidance counselor, his mentor as he described him, told him essentially that it wasn't his fault that the only people who get into Ivy League schools are black athletes or people who are super rich. I have a reason to doubt that person's comment. I don't see any professional doing that without having a bottle of whiskey in their hand and a box full of their stuff from their desk on their way out to their car. Other than that, I don't see why anyone would say that because it's so stupid. It's so insanely idiotic to say something like that to someone. Because even if it's true, you're not supposed to tell that as a guidance counselor. Holy shit. Yeah, the Supreme Court should have had something for affirmative action for pigs. I'm done tasking. Yeah, and so logic is very much the same. And so what I think happened was that the guidance counselor said something to the effect of, well, we could have gotten you in on these programs maybe that exist to help, underrepresented people. Unfortunately, you don't qualify. And by now, DSP in his coddled, pickled brain internalized that and misconstrued it and misinterpreted it to mean you didn't get in because you're not black. You should have worked on that. You should have been more black. And that, of course, eases his pain. DSP did remind me of an incel. He's reported that when he was in school, all the girls liked him, but at the same time, none of them liked him, and they all wanted him as a friend, but none of them wanted to date him. Even though, he was the nicest guy in school, which, I don't know. Usually the people who say they're the nicest are usually the biggest assholes. And finally, I want to discuss the further reinforcement of the narcissism that comes from coddling. And that's when they achieve something and it reinforces their mindset. This thing can be exceptionally mediocre, but have a much greater effect than it really should. That's a little negative for me to say that, oh, you won this thing, it's not as important, you shouldn't feel that proud. No, you should definitely be proud of your accomplishments. You should definitely be proud. But DSP got 4th place in EVO. In a game that people were protesting playing it. People were blacklisting it. People weren't showing up to play it. He got 4th place. Didn't even medal. And he walked around like he was the Messiah. He was the greatest. I'm the best American at this piece of shit game that people didn't want to play. I've told this story before, but there's this German guy in Germany, I assume, and there is a format of Magic the Gathering that's so freakishly unpopular, and I don't really know why. I don't understand exactly why people don't like it. I've never played it myself because I don't play tournament play. That he wins tournaments by just showing up. And this has happened, I think, 2 or 3 times, where the guy shows up to a tournament and there's no one there. And they're like, well, you're the only guy here, so 1st place, enjoy. And thankfully, he's a pretty cool guy about it. He takes it in good stride. I've read an interview with the guy. He's pretty funny about it. But for DSP, or a narcissist, that's amazing. I won 1st place. I'm the best at this format in the entire country. Nobody showed up, dude. That doesn't mean anything. And further things that do this is when he became valedictorian. The official story on how he became valedictorian is frankly embarrassing. I'm surprised he's not embarrassed by this. But his story is that he was in second place to be valedictorian. And there was a girl who was above him in status to be valedictorian. And the way he describes it, she overworked herself into a mental breakdown. And so she basically dropped out of school, dropped out of the high school or whatever. So he just became valedictorian by default. Which I guess if you're second place, that means you still did a lot of work, right? That might not be the case either, because as DSP described his school multiple times, it was essentially in the hood. The way he described his peers is that they were basically Neanderthals. Why have a tournament if no one shows up? I don't know, maybe it's some sort of funding. So the way he described it, his classmates were so freakishly stupid that if you could spell your name, you were valedictorian. The important thing to consider here is that DSP probably just shit on them because he hates them, and he hates everyone. So everyone was an idiot to him. That's very likely that they were more or less average or possibly better, but he thought they were all stupid. But the private school that he was with had such a very small class size. So we go right back to the Evo thing, where he had a small amount of people to compete against. And most people weren't even really interested, apparently, according to him. So him winning is not the accomplishment that it seems like. I'm happy for the dude. Cool, be valedictorian. But if you're valedictorian amongst a bunch of people who rage quit, it doesn't say much. And the other thing is his YouTube success. The way he describes it, he was essentially the Elvis Presley of YouTube. People loved this dude. He was like the Beatles, Elvis Presley, and I don't know, Prince, and Michael Jackson, all combined in one. YouTube was the site for Phil. Because Phil got in there at the beginning and was making quality content that everybody on the planet loved. I don't know why it is that we had any wars at all during those periods, because I would think they'd all be watching Phil. But it's the exact same thing with the Evo thing. YouTube, when it first started, wasn't this gigantic monolith. Very few people were really that involved in YouTube. I didn't find out about YouTube until almost 6 years after it came out. But because, again, he had a limited pool of people to compete against, he shined. His mediocrity was seen as a good thing. And that's the key word here. A narcissist like DSP will see a mediocre victory as not only equal, but superior to a victory earned by another person. His fourth place was more important than the Japanese guy's first place. It had more meaning behind it. His second place valedictorian run up into win by default was more important than that other girl's first place that she earned. And all of that helps to reinforce the coddled, entitled mindset that DSP has. And that is that he is superior just because. He has described his school multiple times, Nastia Fripples. And of course, because DSP's narratives are always twisting to make him look the best, on one hand, he described his school as being extremely elite and over the top and super powerful and, only the biggest mega-brained people there. But then other times said that everyone there could barely dress themselves. So it changes all the time. Now, they did track down the school that it was, and it was essentially a private Christian school. So that's true. But it was very, very small class sizes. I think it was something like maybe graduate class was maybe only 100 people or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but you get that kind of level. I'd be embarrassed if I took... answer your question, World Witch. I don't think he outright called her an idiot, but he did laugh at her. He did laugh at her mental breakdown. He was like, and she had like some sort of mental breakdown or whatever, and she dropped out of school. I don't know. I don't find that funny. That seems depressing to me. Whatever. I guess that's just not me. Catholic schools are basically like that. I went to a Catholic school when I was a kid, and I don't remember the class size being that big. But then again, I was a kid. I have a hard time conceptualizing numbers back then. The only thing Dave is superior, pulling sweaty. Yes, and there really is a psychological reason why DSP is so hooked on that game, and that's because of he can't even open up YouTube without seeing the evidences of his failure. He is not a respected fighting game player. He's not a respected video game player. He's not respected in any capacity whatsoever, in any forum. He is a living joke. But he yearns for the feeling of dominance, the feeling of being on that castle on the mountain. And so that's why he spent so much money on this game, is because when you look at his score and you see the dude top of the leaderboard, or, even 20th place in the leaderboard, that says something. That says, holy shit, this guy has put in time on this shit. And he loves that. If you see some of the leaks from the Discord that they found him in originally, people were sucking his ass or, fawning over him in some capacities. Yeah, the whales, I don't even think the whales respect DSP. I think they pity him more than anything. And they feel a sense of obligation to save him. But so we got a couple more subjects here. And this is the other aspect of DSP's upbringing. And this was going into, someone had brought up that he had been described as stupid multiple times. And that is the critical. And this is another way that narcissism gets born or developed. And the ego is extremely fragile. I'm not talking the ego in the Freudian sense. I'm talking about your self-image. It's very fragile. It's why a lot of us don't have narcissism, and it requires a constant defense. And this is going to be a subject I discuss further, but it's essentially like the system of the mask, the self-preservation. And how is these defenses developed? And that's due to being attacked and fear of being attacked. And I don't see this get addressed very much with DSP, but Linda's also reported to be a very critical person. And that kind of goes into she always had to have it her way. She always had to have her perspective on things. And he had mentioned a couple times that she was, for lack of a better word, toxic to him. And I think this is what helped him develop his sense of defense, because this is something you see in psychology with child neglect or kind of dysfunctional families. And that is that even though this seems like something that should be mutually exclusive, how can you coddle your kid and then criticize him at the same time or be overly critical? Not at all. It's very common. And this is often a problem with the parent's mindset. The parent gets it in their head, hey, I've kissed your ass all the time. Why the hell are you like this? Why the hell are you such an asshole? And they get frustrated like any one of us would. But because they themselves can't really blame themselves, they instead direct that anger towards their kid, even though the kid didn't develop their personality out of nowhere. So we're going to unwind for just a second with a brief clip. I said I wasn't going to do too many clips. This is the only one we're really watching today. And I'm sure you're all going to be fine with it. We're going to only watch maybe like a minute of it. And it's a pretty old one. It's called Shit Italian Moms Say. And DSP's mom was Italian. And this video kind of demonstrates how a parent can be coddling, but at the same time hypercritical.
Friday, could you save me the end of the prosciutto? I'm gonna make a pasta basil. Nikki loves it.
Be careful, that one's got the eggs. This garlic, don't throw it out. This is Italian gold.
I got the Parmesan Romano blend. You're Italian, do it right. Gigi, you hungry? You want a pick? You want a piece? Could we get a slice thin? Yeah, we want to try it. Put the coconuts on the table. I cook him breakfast. He's like, what's for dinner? Oh my God, get out of here. It's phenomenal. Like, look at her in this thing. Oh my God, look at this putan over here wearing that. Who looks like this? Disgraziat. Look at her. I never liked that Ashton Kutcher for her anyway. No, yeah. Oh, he's working. He got a job. That's phenomenal.
And I left him.
Because he's a rat bastard, that's why.
What are you gonna do? Oh my God, you're hysterical. I don't want to make a big to-do out of it. She don't want to listen. Wait till you see her yearbook photos, Donna. You're gonna die. Donna, I can't bother with this right now, okay?
Anthony, will you get your sister out of here? She's gonna give me agita. I'm doing my hair.
$200 shoes you want.
She's got mouth. She's got to mouth this one.
She wants $200 shoes. They better be made of gold.
I'm your mother, that's why. When I say something.
There you go. So that's all you really need to see on that one. But you can see why it is that this happens with parents. In fact, it's fairly normal to the degree that you see in that video with, you know, my dad gave me crap at the same time as he would dote on me. It's just normal. Sorry, JDX. It's just a brief clip to undo some tension from the heavy shit. But you can see how that kind of environment would be hard on a person's psyche to develop normally if it was taken to too much of a degree. And that's what I wanted to elaborate here, is that it can create a very terrifying scenario for a child. If this child has been coddled and doted on and loved and adored and told that nothing is his fault and that he did everything correct and people are just jealous of him and everyone's a loser and awful, but you're the greatest. And then 10 minutes later, this parent is critical. Why are you such a bum? Why are you such a loser? Why did you do this? Why are you stupid? This kid is going to get it into their head, and it's not illogical for them to think this, that they are at risk of losing this love. They are at risk of losing this coddling. You forgot, not fully Italian. Linda's also Polish. So you get that. A kid would be scared to lose this doting that he thought he was going to get. It kind of reminds me of whenever there were, back in like primitive times, certain cultures wrote about eclipses. And they would discuss how the sky went dark and everything was terrible and everyone prayed to God super hard, big time mega prayers. And then the eclipse ended and they're like, holy shit, the prayers worked. That's essentially kind of how it works here, because the parents, in this case, Linda, if I understand what kind of personality she'd have, she'd be the kind to quickly backtrack and be like, okay, I love you, Phil. I love you, dear. You're the greatest, all this and that. But DSP doesn't, little baby Phil doesn't understand that. So what happens there? What happens in that situation is that the kid learns or adapts the need to bargain with their mother, or bargain with the source of love that they're in danger of losing. And this bargaining takes many different forms. It can be rationalizations, using justifications, blaming away your failings, excusing yourself in some sort of way. Mom, it's not my fault. It was John. He did it. He was supposed to put the groceries away. It wasn't me. John was distracting me. And the other very important thing, when DSP described his mom's personality, he essentially described himself. Because what he described is that she's very uncompromising, she only wants her way, blah, 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 blah. And then people in chat were saying, sounds like you, and he banned him. But that there's a reason for that. Is because even the most dense person picks up on the language and values of the source of whatever benefit they're getting. Like, for example, DSP would eventually figure out what language his mom speaks, and then speak to that language, metaphorically. So that's why it is that he adopted all these characteristics that he saw in her, because that's the language she spoke. And this is pretty well documented with a lot of research, and it shows that people who are placed in positions like these tend to identify or develop characteristics of the person that they're in this conflict with. It's an adaptation technique. So that's how it is that DSP can essentially describe himself and not realize it. Because that's you, dude. You became that. There's a repetitious nature to his life. The things he did with his mother are the same things he did with Lana, which are the same thing. And there's even further repetition. I'll get into that in a minute, KWO. And that's, hold on, let me see, where am I? Yeah, I got that one done. I skipped ahead on a couple of these. Oops. Oh, and I was going to say this kind of cycles back to the temperament thing. And DSP's temperament tends to be, let me find if I can find the exact temperament type. But this temperament tends to be rather hysterical. And that combined with, sorry, I gotta type this in real quick. Strange situation. DSP is the anxious, avoidant, insecure. Okay, that's what I thought. Because that mentality is already kind of there in the background, his need to defend himself is usually hyper primed. And that's what we see in DSP's videos. The DSP's speed at which he defends himself, we've all seen it. Dude is a cobra when it comes to that shit. Oh, someone's talking shit about me in another video. Bam! I've got something negative to say. I got something to say. I got some toxicity. And it's his nature of, oh, I gotta address this. I've gotta talk about this. And that probably comes from his need to defend himself from his mom. Because as soon as his mom started flipping out, saying, DSP, you're a load of crap, blah, 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 which I agree with Linda when she was discussing that, but that's neither here nor there. He probably developed that sense of speed and urgency, which is what you see when he's yelling at his viewers. And then going into the subject that KWO had kind of hinted at, I feel like DSP, I gotta be careful with how I phrase this, he misplaces a lot of his anger. And I'll tell you where this comes from. One of the most iconic DSP videos ever is the Wolverine story, which Tevin said it beautifully one time. He said that DSP videos are quite remarkable because you can watch them multiple times and find new pieces of information. And you would have never picked it up if you had just stopped rewatching it, essentially. And that Wolverine story is definitely one of these videos. Because even after watching it a million times, you find something new. The thing that I picked up on with the Wolverine video, and I'm sure other people picked up on, I'm not unique, is that DSP's anger felt so weirdly inappropriate in some capacity. Because in later tellings of the story, he mentioned how it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was a big deal to little Philip, but it wasn't really a big deal to adult Philip, except that that's not true. Because during that video where he's explaining the event, he is angry. He is very mad that he didn't get the figure. And he expresses this in two ways. He's like, why didn't you get me the figure? Why didn't you listen to me? And then when someone asks, well, did they have the money to pay for it? He says, yeah, they had the money. They were just fucking stupid. That doesn't sound like a person who's gotten over it. But my hypothesis is that he is not actually, technically, he's not actually mad about the figure. There is a certain progress goal, or I guess a benchmark when it comes to raising a kid, is that there is this point eventually, hopefully eventually, where the parent begins to recognize that their kid has developed the capacity to make informed decisions, make logical decisions, to be counted on to think for themselves in some aspect. Now, not to say that they are geniuses and gifted and will always make the right decision, but eventually, any parents in the chat will know there comes that point where, okay, my kid's not a complete dumbass. He knows how to function. And that can happen pretty early, can happen pretty late. And sometimes the parents don't ever accept it. And you get very frustrated adults who, even though they're in their 20s or 30s, their parents still see them as essentially incapable of thinking or incapable of demonstrating autonomy. And I think that's where DSP's anger comes from, is because I don't think his parents ever saw that in him. Yeah, and that's the other part of it, Immortal Orange. I don't think his parents ever saw that he was someone who could make good decisions. And frankly, they'd be right to assume that. I think his dad long ago realized that my kid's just stupid. I'm doing the best I can for him, but he's just stupid. And I think Linda realized, kid's too stupid. I can't do anything about it either. Well, it certainly isn't my fault. Linda's got to perpetuate the cycle. And so when the video is happening, you see that DSP's programming that he had been taught is not being respected. And that's where you're getting in Immortal Witch with the mad that he was being listened to. DSP had been trained by his mom to be the smartest, most intelligent, most eloquent person in the room. He used big power brain logic and convinced his mom, without a doubt, that his idea was the best idea. And they didn't respect that. They did not acknowledge that I had been right. And that burned my ass. It wasn't about the figure. It wasn't, I don't think anyway. And to return back to the initial point with DSP's misdirecting anger, I feel like that anger has never actually really been addressed. This feeling that mom and other authority figures or critical voices need to understand that I know what I'm doing. I am an informed, intelligent adult with a business degree. And that's also why he's so angry at trolls. And you see this come up every once in a while. He lets it slip, but not really. He doesn't even really let it slip. People might not notice it. Is that he's very frustrated that people are not convinced. Because he's the smartest person in the room. He's used big brain power logic on you. He's told you how it works. And these fucking detractors say, Phil, I don't think that's how it works. Well, what are you supposed to do about that? Obviously, you're insane and crazy for disrespecting me and not believing me. You're like my mom all over again. Banned. You also probably wouldn't get me the Wolverine figure. Banned. Get that ass out of here. It's this anxiety, this feeling of helplessness that I feel permeates him. And it's... I think it really nestles into most of his anger with things. Is that he is essentially defending a castle. The castle being his mentality and mindset and logic and worldview that he's developed all over these years from his parents. And he built this castle of his superiority. And he's defending it from the barbarian hordes that are the detractors. And he's not being successful. For some reason, they're still coming through. They're still messing up my goddamn castle. And the tools that I have been equipped with are not helping. I am not smart enough to deal with this. I am not gifted enough to deal with this. I am not perceptive enough to deal with this. I am not convincing enough to deal with this. I do not have the resources or personal commitment to deal with this. But I don't understand why that is. I am the smartest person in the room. I am the valedictorian. I am 4th place at Evo. This shouldn't be a thing for me. My mom told me all the time when I was a baby I was the greatest. How am I under attack? It reminds me, okay, this is getting too civilized. Let's get nice and ridiculous here. It reminds me of Frieza and Vegeta. Both Frieza and Vegeta had this exact same system go down, where they had been raised with the mentality that they were the best. Vegeta was told that he was born to be the greatest. He was genetically gifted to be the greatest of all Saiyans. My dad is the king of Saiyans. That makes me better. Frieza, whole life, I am the best. I take out planets single-handedly. So when Goku started trumping their asses and kicking the crap out of them, the amount of anger and anxiety and frustration, it's not fair. I am the best. How is this monkey, not how LTG calls people monkeys, how is this simian alien beating me? It's not fair. It's not right. And and I think a lot of that has its roots at mom, because why isn't mom listening to me? Why doesn't mom respect me? Why doesn't mom see me as an adult? Why doesn't mom see me as intelligent and informed? She doesn't. And why should she? You're a loser, dude. You had your wedding, and you had to basically do a board meeting with your mom. And your mom, the way he described it, he should have been far more embarrassed. Because he tried to throw the trolls and the detractors at his mom. And, he twisted the narrative, obviously, to make her sympathetic. But no. If I went to my parents and I was in dire straits and bankruptcy and I got taxes and shit, and I said, well, there are all these people on the internet making fun of me. My dad would probably be like, yeah, no, I'm there, I'm making fun of you too. Or at the very least say, that's a shitty excuse. It's I guess that's the closest I'm going to get to what I could consider a diagnosis with this video, is that DSP's mom, I think that's who he's yelling at more than anything. When he's yelling at the morons in chat, he really wishes he could probably say this kind of stuff to his mom. I bet he really wishes he could tell them that they're dumb, or that they should have bought me the Wolverine figure. Why didn't you listen to me? Why didn't you listen to me? But he can't. He can't yell at his parents. Because one, he's a coward. And two, he's at least smart enough to know that that's the thing that he needs to be able to rely on at the end. He needs to be able to have his mom or your daddy there to hopefully bail him out when his tire gets stolen, right? So he can't do that. I'll try and find it, Mortal Witch. I'll try and find it later, put it on Discord. So that's my Freudian diagnosis. I hate Freud. Some of Freud's shit is so stupid, but when he discussed people's issues with their moms, outside of the sexual context, a lot of them kind of made sense. And I want to give DSP the benefit here and say, I don't want, if for example, if Phil or one of his spies saw this video, I don't want them to come back to them saying, well, he says you got a mama problema. And he says, no, I don't. I'm not going to be the person that says, see, that's proof that he actually has this problem. That's not fair. That's always lame. Because, it's like, you're in denial. No, I'm not. Oh, see, that shows you're in denial. That's shitty. That's trash. I'm only expressing how he appears to me. When I see this dude screaming at chat, I just see a little boy screaming at his parents. And in many ways, if you haven't read the book Frankenstein, I really advise it. It's a pretty short story. You could probably finish it in maybe a weekend. Or during the work week, you could finish it. It's kind of gauche to compare DSP to Frankenstein, but there is an underlying narrative in Frankenstein that kind of applies to DSP. And in the actual book, Frankenstein, the doctor, is not this cackling, evil, mad scientist who, I'm unleashing this monster on the world, take that, peasants. He isn't that. He's this dude who got really hyped one night, super stoked and amped and pumped, and started sciencing hard, aggressive scienceage. And then in the morning woke up and said, oh my god, what the hell is that? That's a monster. Oh no, this is really bad. I gotta get away from this scenario. And I feel in some ways that's kind of how Linda is with DSP. And that Linda, I don't think necessarily set out to make the biggest shithead on the planet. That's kind of a big goal. I don't think even DSP could be considered the biggest shithead. I'm sure we could make him worse. But she created this monster. And throughout the whole story, Frankenstein, more than anything, just wants the approval of his creator. He's like, dude, you created me. I have no one in this world. I am completely naked and completely exposed. I have no family. I have no friends. I have nothing. You should, by design, be there for me. And you're not. That's bullshit. And so that's kind of DSP. DSP really wants to be accepted or be seen as valuable in his mom's eyes. But his mom built him up and crashed him down consistently to the point where how can you be respected, And I'll admit, while writing this outline, I actually felt a little bad for DSP. Because this does suck. This does suck to have this kind of thing happen, where he can actually say, nothing I could do. Because you're not responsible for how your parents raise you. That's not how it's supposed to work. Your parents are supposed to be intelligent enough to realize, hey, this could probably screw up my kid if I raise him this way. And for whatever reason, they didn't do that. Even his dad, who really should have stepped up and done that more, didn't. Just didn't. And that's a bummer. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention I'm made of dead people? Fuck this. You owe me a wife. And where was I going with that? So I feel for DSP. He has this castle, like I mentioned earlier. He has this castle that has been built for him to occupy and defend, but he doesn't have the tools to actually defend it. But the solution is pretty obvious. And I feel like DSP could change as a person. Hell, even Adam saw that DSP potentially has the capacity to change because the avenue's there. All it takes is for him to stop defending this castle and let it get torn down. Let him find humility. Let him find the capacity to feel empathy for others, or to not see himself as the greatest of all time, or to see that he is very much the same as anyone else in terms of what they have to deal with, you know. He acts like no one else has to get up early to go to work. PNF, I want to say this. There's a great quote, and it comes from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it says, if it was easy to change, people would do it all the time. And I think people can change, but it's a shit ton of work. It is a shit ton of energy and focus you have to put into it. And some people aren't going to do it, or they're probably not going to find the energy to do it. And that's kind of the final point I wanted to make here in this entire episode, was that in order to change, DSP would have to exert a shit ton of effort. He would have to become very introspective. He would have to open himself up to the criticism of others. He would have to really listen to people. Sure, there are going to be detractors that say, yeah, you should just go ahead and kill yourself, or, you know what, you're a piece of shit, jump off a roof. But I think there's plenty of detractors out there who would say, okay, you really are interested in getting your shit together. Okay, here's what you can do to not be a complete dickhead. Listen to those ones. It's fine. There's plenty of them. Don't listen to the one who's telling you to walk in front of a train. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to my advice. But the thing to remember, though, is that DSP recently went on a crying fit because the mailman did not bring his package to his door. And I will say it this way. DSP needing to change himself is going to require infinitely more effort than it's going to take to waddle angrily to the mailbox. And if he can't handle waddling to the mailbox without throwing a fit, no, he's not going to change. The avenue's there, the potential's there, but he's not going to do it. And that's my entire outline. Thank you very much for sitting with me through all that. A lot of those discussion topics that I brought up, they're going to branch out to other things. For example, I really wanted to discuss in a future episode the concept of a mask. And the mask it's kind of Jungian, but it's the concept that you have this identity of self and that you defend that self from attacks. And so I wanted to discuss that more specifically with DSP. What was the other thing I wanted to do? Yeah, I'm sure once I read over it, I'll think of it some more. But there's like just his general hypocrisy. That's always worth discussing. Oh, I remember. The freedom of being a victim. That's something I wrote here. Because that's also why it is that he's probably going to be resistant to change. Is because he's very comfortable where he's at. Why would he need to change? He has ignorant idiots sending him money, and he can just sit inside all day. What? Why would I need to change? Everything's working out perfectly for me. So I wanted to discuss that there actually is a lot of freedom and comfort in being a victim. And I wanted to discuss that about DSP. I hope this has been fun. I hope that I haven't come off as too cringy or, you know, I know everything there is to know about DSP. Again, Like I said at the very beginning, I'm telling you what I'm seeing, and I'm trying to explain why it is that I'm seeing it this way. So I'm going to use this time for open discussion of chat. His lack of autonomy is also shown in the car crash story, where his mother was more mad that he disobeyed her more than his condition. Yes, that's very true. And it also speaks to possibly adjusting the story to make himself look more sympathetic. I still think DSP was just an anchor baby for Linda to keep... Poor Dave. Dave might be... Okay. Let's hear your actual thoughts. Amongst all the characters in the DSP-averse, who is the most genuinely tragic character? Oh, thank you, Cafetic. That means a lot. I would say either Dave, Leanna, or John. And I would probably lean John, because John actually was the person who did it. If you really think about it, John is the person who can truly say he did nothing wrong. He really didn't. He gave this dude so many chances, so much forgiveness. Even Leanna fucked with DSP quite a bit, but John never did. John was always coolest to him. And even Dave essentially abandoned his son to the wills of his mother, so he also did do something wrong. But I think John is probably in Howard too. John and Howard never did anything to Phil. They never fucked with him or sabotaged him. They made a video airing out their grievances, and even then John sounded more heartbroken than angry. Ornowich, don't just, we'll discuss that later, man. Phil went on later, say Howard wasn't his friend, he was John's friend. Yeah. A mature retrospective on the Wolverine story would be to realize that his parents probably had a good reason to not get the toy at the time, but instead he lashes out in anger and calls them idiots. Yes, there's tons of reasons why parents don't do anything for any sort of reason. And a lot of those, because DSP has a lot of reasons why he doesn't do anything, but you just need to not question those reasons. His parents, though, they had no reason. There was nothing stopping them from doing that. There's always the possibility that they didn't want to. That could always be a reason. And what are you going to do? Make them want to? So I have a question. What would everyone like the next subject to be about? I have a few here that I wanted to discuss. I added some more. I was thinking about doing one about WWE. And specifically, there's an interesting thing that Howard said during the video. That also is one of those videos where you can watch it a million times and find something new each time. Where Howard discusses how he truly thinks DSP watches too much wrestling. And that adds up. Because a lot of DSP's behaviors are very centered around WWE narratives. And even though DSP says that, he always knew wrestling was fake, I don't think he really does. I think on some level he thinks wrestling is real because of inter-character dynamics. So that was one that I wanted to do. Homosexual tendencies, it's not one that I have on the list. I honestly think his homosexual tendencies boil down to him just trying to be weird for the sake of being weird. Let's see, what are my other ones here? I wanted to do one on his hypocrisy, but I feel like that's a nine-part series right there. I want to discuss the concept of his laziness and how it is that it creates more work for him and creates more anxiety. I wanted to discuss his nature of being brutally honest as a defense mechanism for shitting on people. The blame the bus driver phenomenon, I wanted to discuss that some more. The perception of reality, and this goes into the scenario with the guidance counselor, how DSP can change the environment to mask what he wants to be said. and the deflection of responsibility, such as they made me do it, how DSP has no agency. Self-isolation. Self-isolation would be a fun subject. How he justifies begging. That'd be a good one. I'm writing these down. That's why I'm quiet. Yes, the self-isolation one sounds really good, and the begging justification. The begging justification one, it can blend in with a lot of other things, and that kind of blends into the sense of entitlement of, well, I'm just owed the money. I work hard. The human moon, alien side. How odd he acts during his react sessions. Dude, his react sessions, it's like you say, he's an alien, man. What's a car humor? He also wanted to create a tournament to rival Evo called Impact. He modeled the whole thing after WrestleMania. Boring. Lame. What a loser. That would be pretty interesting, though. Yes, and that's what I was thinking about Lost in 10, is that DSP, okay, this will be a preview for when I do the wrestling episode. DSP got it in his head at some point that everyone understood what a heel was. That everyone just knows that if I'm talking all this shit, I don't really mean it, and I'm just kind of being edgy for the crowd. Well, Viscount didn't seem to pick up that memo. Attitude toward fans would be a good one. Too bad Jabali did the same thing with CEO, complete with... Oh, goodness. Okay, so I guess that's it for me today. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. What's DSP playing next time? What's he playing tomorrow? Let's check it out. Did you all like my unsettling pig art? I had a lot of fun with that. AI art is so hard to use because it took me nearly, 60 tries to get all the slides you see. Because the AI gets hung up on little shit. Excuse me. Oh, he's playing Street Fighter. Oh, that could be funny. Alright. Street Fighter's fine. Stable Diffusion. I use this one called Photor. Photor. It sounds like a villain in He-Man. A big... You guys, hold on. Let's have a little bit of fun here real quick. Let's see if we can do that right now in Photor. Let's see. A pig in a party hat. Chill. Yeah. And what do we want him to be? We want him to be psychedelic pop. Hell yeah. Generate it, dude. Let's see it. Oh my... Hold on. I'll get this fixed here in a second. Uh-huh. What? There you go. Here's your pig in a party hat. He's got a little cupcake too. That's awesome. That's a cute ass picture. Look at this dude. I like his little cupcake. That's amazing. Let's see it in anime illustration. Let's see anime pig in a party hat. If your PC is good, try it Krita with Stable Diffusion. You can draw stuff and it fixes for you. Oh, hell yeah. I really want to get a drawing pad and have that be part of streams. Oh, look at this little one. Look at how happy this guy is. This one, he's kind of a pig with dachshund DNA. And look at there's Cat. See, they're married. That's also Cat. Come on, what's that last one going to be? Yeah. There's the king. That's it for me, guys. Thank you again so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for helping make my first episode of DSP Psychology such a blast. I really am thankful to all of you. Take care. See you. I should stream tomorrow. I should be on here tomorrow. So I'll see you then.